All right, here we go. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, today we're going to be doing our tafsir and continuing with what we had left off at and where we had left off at. That's proper English right there. So last time we were actually continuing right there with ayah 6 in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And I know it's quite, it's been what right now, 5 classes just for this ayah. Well, that's because, of course, remember, we're doing with Tafsir al-Qurtubi, working with Tafsir al-Qurtubi, and that's more related to the different Islamic rulings. So what you're really doing, you're not just doing tafsir, but you're doing tafsir, plus you're doing fiqh, plus you're doing hadith, plus you're doing seerah, plus you're doing lugha arabiya, all of that together. So don't feel that I'm just taking a tafsir class, but we're integrating all the different areas of Islamic knowledge, and we're laying it out right there in order to make a vision that is bonding all those different sciences in order to learn our Quran and to learn our Islam. So that's why, you're seeing these classes kind of go a little longer than you had expected. So be patient in talab al-ilm. So we left off last time in talking about what does it mean to imsahu bi ru'usikum? What does it mean faghsilu wujuhakum? And we even went in details, and it was rather a fundamentalist, and what we mean by a fundamentalist, not the fundamentalists where, the kind in the media, but we mean usuli. And the usuli side, we said, well, why did they have differences of opinions on whether the washing for wudu, whether it's supposed to be in order, in a particular order, or whether there can't be any time lapse that distracts you away from wudu, and that was called al-muwala, and then the tartib, which basically is in order, and then we also had differences of opinions on the amount. So is it up to, is it including a certain, let's say right there, is it including il-ka'bayn, is it including il-marafiq, is it including is washing the feet, including the ankles, is washing the arms, including the elbows, how much is it? So where's that border, and where does it end, and where does it begin? Now, here's one thing. What was really important to learn is that the Muslim scholars were extremely keen on understanding the intricate details in the words themselves and even the letters, to make sure that they are embracing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entirely. And that's why in Lugha Arabiya, because it's so detailed, because it's so intricate, that's why they actually had these differences of opinion. So does the letter wa right there and wa right there, does that mean just the addition? And does this letter ba right here, does it mean that this is the whole thing to be wiped? This is partial wiping. This is 1/3. This is 3 fingers. This is using 1 finger. What really is it? All right. And the other thing, is it right there in where the letter fa, does that necessarily mean that there's a condition? In other words, you really have to be in a specific order, not get distracted, and all of that. We went into those differences of opinions, but what is really important to me, and the most important thing, is that you recognize that the scholars were actually taking each and every single letter, each and every single word seriously, because they were keen on embracing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. That's the most important thing. So at the end of the day, the second thing we learn is that scholars had differences of opinion. So to be fanatic on one particular opinion and to alienize or ostracize some Muslims for not embracing an opinion that was a considerable opinion by scholars is actually rather being ignorant and not being smart. Because if you're smart and if you did your homework in learning Islam, then you would actually know that the scholars had differences of opinions. And you would know that scholars that are smarter than you and I, smarter than the other person you're trying to debate, and we're actually having differences of opinions and different interpretations. So to somehow think that it's only your opinion or what you think is preponderant should be the only place that is considerable is rather acting in ignorance, because then that person is really ignorant on these great scholars that al-Qurtubi was quoting, and we're also seeing the adab. We're seeing the adab, we're seeing the great manners that al-Qurtubi or even other scholars are embracing when they made mistakes, to admit that they made a mistake, just like al-Kisai when he actually read an ayah in a wrong way, and he said even a child wouldn't make that mistake. And we're also seeing how al-Qurtubi was quoting scholars, even though he's quoting them at other times when they had made an outstanding research. But then at other times, he would actually say, well, in this point, it was really strange how he would make this mistake, just like when al-Qurtubi talked about al-Qiyah al-Tabari. And he said, well, someone that is actually of that level of scholarship, how can he actually miss out on such a point? So I wanted you to really see this hands-on. I want you to see these words really said in front of us, and just even, let me say, even if you don't remember each and every single thing we're saying, but just seeing and, let me say, putting yourself in the environment of these scholars and how they embrace the Quran, how they embrace the words, how they embraced one another, despite the differences, is actually putting us at another level of environment. You see, the environment that we might have wanted to see. Trust me, unfortunately, it's really sad to say that you're really not going to see it in the masjid, and you're not going to see it in your neighborhood. You're not going to see it with your friends, because unfortunately, most of us are actually not even close to understanding something as simple as Tafsir al-Qurtubi, let alone embracing even their scholarship and their vision and their akhlaq. So when we cannot find, let me say, this level of akhlaq, this level of adab, this level of scholarship, this level of vision, then the place that we can find it in is really from those that we know how they ended in terms of, one, their thabat, how they had put in the effort. For the past 2 days, there was one ayah in Surah At-Tawbah. That's really just, I guess it's really scaring me. Let me take you to that ayah for a bit. I know it's a little off, but let's see. We're here 117. We're going to go to Surah At-Tawbah. We're just going to jump. Okay, we're just going to jump a little bit. I want you to see that ayah. All right, they're going to go. Sorry, but it's kind of, here we go. Surah At-Tawbah. I'm trying to find it. Rab, okay. Okay, no, we passed that one. Sorry, I'm going the wrong direction because where, sorry, I'm getting lost, but I really wanted you to see that ayah. Here we go. I want you to look at this ayah, and when you see this ayah, it just like when we were seeing the scholars in where with Surah At-Tawbah, with Surah Al-Ma'idah, in where they were going in all those details. Let's look at this. ولو أرادوا الخروج لأعدوا له عدة ولكن كره الله بعاثهم فثبطهم وقيل اقعدوا مع القاعدين لو خرجوا فيكم ما زادوكم إلا خبالا ولا أوضعوا خلالكم يبغونكم الفتنة وفيكم سماعون لهم والله عليم بالظالمين. This ayah was actually scaring me so much. Why? Because let me tell you what this ayah is saying. If they had wanted to go with you, they would have put in and invested all their energy to make the preparation. But the Lord Almighty hated that they would follow along. So he made them feel lazy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was basically, and they were told that they should sit and not be amongst those that had accompanied the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Tabuk. And they were basically told to just sit with those that were sitting. If they would have went with you, they would have basically just caused more and more divisions, and they would have slowed you down. And of course, because what they're really aiming at, they're really يبغونكم الفتنة. What they're really aiming at is they just want to create a fitna. They just want to create this locomotion, but not because they really wanted to make any type of a relationship in order to help you get there. And subhanallah, as I was saying this ayah, وَلَا أَوْضَعُوا خِلَالَكُمْ يَبْغُونَكُمُ الْفِتْنَةَ وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّاعُونَ لَهُمْ, and some of you would actually listen to what they're saying. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. Just a couple of things to look here. وَلَوْ أَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجِ. In other words, I want you to flip that in where if they had really wanted to go and accompany you, whether it's in talab al-ilm, whether it's in jihad, whether it's in helping you organize different events, they would have actually put in the effort. They would have considered the planning. They would have put it within their schedule. They would have, put the effort, whether it's the money, whether it's the schedule, no matter what it is. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want them to be involved, didn't want them to join. In other words, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hate all of that? Well, because they hated coming. If they hated coming, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would hate their presence. That's so scary. That's so scary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hated their presence. And what happened? وَقِيلَ قَعْدُوا مَعَ الْقَاعِدِينَ. Told them, I want you to sit with those that are sitting at home, basically. In other words, and of course, al-qa'idin here, al-qa'idin an al-qital, those that are really sitting down and didn't accompany the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Tabuk. But al-ibra bi'umum al-lafzi la bi-khusus al-sabab. Remember that statement, and we said that the theme is really in the generalization of the words and not necessarily in the particularization or in the circumstance that that was circling during the revelation for this ayah. And that's so scary because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even says the reason why we don't want their company, even though to those that are seeing their numbers really coming in to add the number of attendees, they would basically be considered as an addition. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَوْ خَرَجُوا فِيكُمْ مَا زَادُكُمْ إِلَّا خَبَالًا. If these people were to come with you, they would really just create divisions. They would slow you down. There are certain people, their company is not good, even though you would think, hey, we're 6 people, we're 7 people, we're 8 people. But in reality, they could actually be the ones that are slowing your project down. So people that are slowing the project down, we just have to let go and not think that their addition is actually a plus, but it's actually a minus. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّعُونَ لَهُمْ. And some of you would actually pay attention to what they're saying without you realizing. And you know what? I came across this video and it really resonated with this A. I want you to look at it. All right. I want you to look at it, even though the video is kind of going fast. Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna take out the sound and we're gonna a little bit, sometimes speed it up and sometimes make it go faster. Illustration of a company situation that is far too common. Okay, so here we go. Struggle & Co. Inc. That's pretty cool. And then I absolutely love this one. Definite workload, many challenges to overcome, and goals to be achieved. Who will help you get there? Well, let's say here's a leader, decides to continue the path, keep going, performer, and of course, he knows where to go, what to do, and is really pushing, takes full responsibility for his job, and therefore, of course, helps in where it's like, okay, I need some help. Here's another person giving a hand, and highly effective doer. And of course, trying to help. And you could see definitely not like the person in the front, but correct guidance, training. He'll be a future helper, I guess. And a good assistant. Well, there's this person who's pretending to help, but then, of course, let's say he's really busy with his little, I don't know what it is, but someone willing to help. But of course, his contribution is not making a difference to the overall result. But of course, he's more putting weight than anything else, gets distracted with his phone, with this butterfly. But then this person comes along and he's really potential source of trouble more than anything else. He goes up and down, alternates between helping and all of that, but his influence, of course, is making the work harder and less predictable for others. Yeah, well, and here we go. Of course, it becomes an overload on others, but then here comes this munafiq right there, a suppressive person, slows everybody down. And for, of course, actively trying to destroy the operation, is often trying to hide his deeds by the use of nice social mask. And of course, and what you end up is really this person really slowing everything down. But then let's see what else he does. He's trying to pretend nice, gives a thumbs up that he's actually, helping everybody. But then he becomes undetected. And if he becomes undetected, he becomes a dangerous threat to the organization. And let's see what else he does. Well, of course, he pretends to be nice, but then he does something else. Look, now he starts to provoke someone in order to create some kind of a locomotion, in order to create some kind of trouble. And what does this guy do? He basically starts creating drama, starts provoking other people. And definitely that doesn't look good in the whole process of project. And here we go. Now this guy is starting to notice, hey, someone is actually going farther than us. So what does he do? He decides, you know what, let me stop right there. This is winning. And of course, everybody's working together. But this guy, hey, time to get rid of you. You got to leave. Here's the munafiq. Munafiq number one, munafiq number two. You got to leave. Learn how to precisely, of course, differentiate between productive and destructive people. And I love this video. And it helps to get the team more safe, stable, and productive. And of course, definitely instead of, yep, here we go. We got to change positions. There's no struggle and Co. Inc. I like that one. Where there we go. Now we're working together. And of course, let's say it's basically understanding the people, the difference in people and what they can do. And that's the same thing with that A. I absolutely, loved that A, and it even scared me. Here we go. It even scared me because it really looks exactly like this short video. I just hope that video doesn't get deleted. That video, meaning my video, doesn't get deleted for, I guess, sharing this video and telling me that I had basically, not respected the, what do they call that? Copyrights, exactly. So this is that area. وَلَوْ أَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجَ لَأَعَدُّوا لَهُ عُدَّةً. And here's the thing, what really scares me is, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when, for example, we're not able to memorize Quran, or maybe we're not able to do certain activities, is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is feeling that we don't belong amongst that? Where are we on this map of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of us? And that's the part that's really scaring me. Because when you're looking at these ayat and you're seeing these scholars, it's really taking us into recognizing that even if you cannot find the good examples that you wish to see, remember the guy that was pushing on the cargo or whatever, that wagon. All right. And that's the thing, is that some people actually take the lead in order to say, well, this needs to be done, and I'm going to do it. This needs to be done, and I'm going to do it, and puts in the effort. But other people, no, they'll consider themselves that I'm fine. I'm actually going to the masjid. I'm part of it. But what they're really doing is just creating the drama within the masjid, or creating the drama and trying to somehow create a scene at the masjid and not really do anything. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّعُونَ لَهُمْ. And some of us, it really takes our sincerity away. It really distracts us. And some of us can probably be listening to this kind of conversation, and without us realizing, it takes away our sincerity. It takes away our focus. It takes away, of course, the project from getting done. And then we're just lost and confused. Why aren't we getting there? What happened? Well, that's where we really need to figure out our deen, and we really need to figure out where we're supposed to be at and what's actually causing all of this. And then we need to put in the effort in order to get to that whole goal that we're supposed to be getting to. So when we look at al-Qurtubi right there, it's really seeing how they managed to create, I would say, despite the differences in times where one might have died 300 years ago or 200 years ago, or maybe even more years, but they still considered that we work together. We basically would benefit from one another, that someone left at point A, my job is to continue to point B, but that doesn't mean that I would basically undermine the distance that this person worked hard in order to get to point A. And that's how we would work together. Anywhere to disregard someone's efforts and disregard the scholars and all the effort that they put in, and continue undermining the past efforts, or even the efforts that we have today, and say this group is this. You're talking about this organization, that organization. No, embrace the effort, the da'wah. If, for example, you're seeing a group of Muslims working on people's spirituality, maybe, certainly, there is some bid'ah in it, or innovation in it, but don't undermine the effort that they're actually doing in bringing people closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the efforts that they're trying to keep them away from all the different contaminations, all the different fitan out there. That's what they know how to do. Certainly, we can probably talk, and we can probably bring in some education, awareness, etc., but don't necessarily just cancel them out. Same thing. You could say other people, they're actually working from a different direction, and what they're doing is trying to do some, let's say, activism, political activism, and they're the ones that are really protecting your back. You wouldn't be able to do all of this if they weren't the ones that were protecting your back. Because if you're criminalized for your da'wah, you're criminalized for your hijab, you're criminalized for your deen, you would not be standing right there, just going and saying, I will go to the masjid, because your masjid would actually be, without these ones that are working on the political activism, your masjid would not even exist. So we need these people to protect our backs. At the same time, we've got another group that's basically deciding, hey, what I can do is travel and tell people about Islam. This is what I can do. This is how I can remind them of what it means to be good Muslims, to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what I know how to do. I just know how to do individual things. I'm not too smart to be a scholar, but this is what I know how to do. Not everyone is smart to be a scholar. Not everybody is capable of being a hafiz. Other people, they're basically the ones that are the business people. They're like, hey, I don't know how to get ilm like you. I don't know how to be part of your class, but I do know how to fund what you're doing. And these people, we wouldn't be able to continue our classes without their support. That's what they know how to do. They don't know how to attend classes. They don't know how to make classes. They just know how to make money. They don't want the money for themselves. They just know how to invest. And that's the thing, is that we don't want to undermine the investment that everyone can actually invest in. And not everybody is necessarily, a person that has the money, or a person that has the intelligence, or a person that has the skill. Now, that's a key thing. Not everyone has the skill to actually do the da'wah too. Some people, subhanAllah, they were blessed with acceptance. You will see someone might actually have millions of followers, but really the ilm that they have is really small. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the hearts of people that people like them. The method, it's a skill. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had gifted them with. Not everyone is gifted with that. But here's one thing, is that if you want to get some level, let's say of some level of scholarship, the person that wants to get into scholarship, or at least to become scholars, ulama, etc., their choice of what they look for in the classes is completely different from another person. Most people are actually looking for motivational speakers that motivate their deen. But a person that is seeking ilm has the motivation, but they're actually looking for, let's call it, the resources to advance their ilm. So for those that are looking for the resources, that's what you would find in these big books, like these volumes of tafsir or volumes of fiqh, not the type of motivational speeches. The motivational speeches are more for those that are, struggling with their emotions, and they're trying to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trying to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but struggling. But a person, think of it as a stage of development. When you're in early teenagehood, you're looking for social acceptance. You're trying to somehow find and resonate with the people around you, etc. But once you graduate from all of that, then of course, master's and PhD, you don't have many friends anymore, because of course the undergrad years you were of course, well, in school you have a lot of social relations. During your undergrad years, of course, the number of people, they became limited, and then during your graduate years they became, really, there's no one. Why? Because it's your research, you're on your own, you're navigating your research on your own. For your master's and your PhD, during master's there was a lot of discussion, but during your PhD it's really just you on your own. That's the same thing, in where you have to ask yourself, am I here at an elementary level, or am I here secondary level, Or am I here in undergrad? Where am I? Even though you might say, well, I know I didn't have really an Islamic background, education in order for me to say I'm at a PhD level. But here's one thing. Although I'm not necessarily just talking about the education piece of it, but if you surround yourself with successful people, studies actually say you will increase your probability, your chances of becoming a successful person by 30% or by 15%. And if you surround yourself with those that are not successful, you're actually regressing your capacities and regressing your potentials and even taking your chances of becoming a successful person. You're actually taking it back to 30% chances lower than the expectations. Oh, that's the same thing. In where what you surround yourself with, and let's say the resources that you use are basically going to be determining where you're going to be heading. So when we look at all of this, I know it's a little challenging even though I know I'm speaking in English, but I know it's a little challenging to understand a lot of these terminologies or a lot of these words. I'm translating it. I'm trying, to make it easy, but here's one thing. It's extremely important to take notes. Take notes. Sometimes listen to the recorded part of it. Sometimes memorize. Talab al-ilm goes into different stages. Number one, طلب العلم in the beginning, أوله الاستماع. The first thing, you're just listening. The second thing, you're basically putting in some effort to understand. Number three, you're putting in the effort. الحفظ is extremely important. You gotta memorize. There are certain things that you really have to memorize, that you really have to repeat over and over again. Why is memorization important? Well, that's one thing that the American education system is failing in, which is the part about memorization. The American education system is not considering memorization at all as important. And then you're seeing that the education systems that consider that exactly like the Indian education system and even before, the Muslim education system was considering that memorization is part of making sure that you actually have the borders, the perimeters, the notes actually stamped in, let's say, grounded in your mind. Memorization is key. That's why right now in America, they're getting all these doctors coming from India and Pakistan and the Arabic world and even China. Why? Because right now, their expectations of what actually makes a good doctor, they've got the numbers, but a lot of the American students are actually not making it to those numbers. Who's making it to those numbers or to those expectations? They're actually the students that are coming from a different kind of an education system. So just keep that in mind, that hifz is actually key. It's not enough to hear all of this, and it's not enough to just listen. You gotta take notes. You gotta memorize certain quotes. You gotta memorize certain, let's call it the certain information in order for you to expand your knowledge. And that's how later on will actually develop into becoming fiqh. What is fiqh? The word fiqh generally means to understand, but to understand actually means to grasp the different pieces of information. It becomes one small piece of information. Think of it as a puzzle. one small piece of information, you connect it with another small piece of information and another third until you basically connect all the different dots, and that's how you create a whole vision. Once you connect these pieces of the puzzle, that's how you will create a whole complete vision where you will be capable of not creating a vision of intellect, but also a vision that your heart would relate with, which is why the Prophet ﷺ had actually talked about that in terms of a mu'min. You would not be a mu'min, you would not be a believer حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به, until your desire, until your nafs, until your heart is actually going in parallel with what the Prophet ﷺ had come with. So it starts out with having an understanding, with having a vision where you're seeing the world in a particular way. But seeing the world in a particular way, it doesn't mean that you completely resonated with it. You would resonate with it once you put in the effort to make it into action. But in order to get all these areas, I'm here. I know most of you would not memorize each and every single thing, but please do take notes as we're doing all of this and rememorize certain quotes. Inshallah, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will see you're connecting these dots together, and you will see later on with the time, you will see that what is presented here, keep this in mind, girls, please listen to this. When we go to Kulliyat al-Sharia, I know oftentimes we would think this person has a PhD, this person had a bachelor's degree in Islamic studies or fiqh or whatever it is. But guess what? Let me tell you a secret. Having a bachelor's degree doesn't really mean that you have the Islamic knowledge. Guess what? Neither does a master's. Neither does a PhD. What? Then who does? Well, let me tell you what happens. A bachelor's degree, they'll take, I would say, chapters in, okay, they're almost what? They're almost 90 different courses, and we're not talking about classes here. All right, maybe 90 different courses, yeah, give or take. All right, probably chapters on hadith and certainly tafsir, fiqh. They'll go into different chapters in Islamic studies. But learning these chapters, certainly it takes away a lot of the ignorance about your Islam. But just by memorizing these chapters and learning these chapters, it doesn't really mean that the person is capable necessarily to do thorough research. So during the master's years, they would basically start giving them, I guess, this critical thinking embedded in their system, in where, hey, I want you to learn how to be a critical thinker of what you had learned during your undergrad, and I want you to be able right now to develop the ability to, let's say, one, go to the resources, investigate, navigate the different thoughts that we didn't teach you during your undergrad years. Now that becomes exciting, very, very exciting. And then you start going to the resources, but the resources, you still really, during your master's years, you still don't really know which resources to go to, because it's not just any random resource. So you're still really learning how to use these resources. Where are they? What resources? How do I even understand these words? And then, of course, during your PhD, you're really just learning how to go back to not only the resources, but now you've actually supposedly that you had mastered going to these resources. You know how to research these resources. You know how to understand them. You know how to present them. Now I want you to study them. Now I want you to study them. That's why I'm saying not every single person actually went to the level of studying them. Many that actually had PhDs, they really just had, I would say, the education on how to research. But in order to really prove that the person really did their homework in studying is really seen in the work that they're actually doing, all right? Their ability to, one, understand it, continue teaching it, continue this. And that's why teaching is actually part of talab al-ilm and not the end of talab al-ilm. Want you to keep that in mind. Teaching is part of talab al-ilm and not the end of talab al-ilm. So we are all here really طلاب علم. Don't think that, oh, there's a PhD, they're actually done with talab al-ilm. Absolutely not. We're all طلاب علم. Just by going to these resources, I'm learning as you are learning too. We're all learning together. Because all I learned was really how to navigate these resources. Doesn't make me a scholar. It just makes me that I just basically had the education on how to go to these resources. And as we go along, we're learning together. We're bonding together to get this in. We're bonding together to really see, let me say, a group of people that were really rare, to the point that you won't find these people at the masjid. You won't find them within our society. In fact, you may not even find them living today on earth. I know it's not all the way true, because at least نحسبهم كذلك. We can't judge a person that is living that they're going to be free of fitna, because we had seen scholars and real scholars that actually fell in fitna and were awarded by Israel. Ya Allah, these are great scholars, and certainly they achieved a lot in one talab al-ilm and delivering ilm and etc. And I don't doubt their education at all. But then you will say, al-Khomeini actually said, I know I'm quoting al-Khomeini here, but not that I'm Shia. Of course, my name's Aysha, so but he actually said, if your enemy is content of you, then just accuse yourself. Just look into yourself. So if your enemy is actually content of you, then you actually had given shaitan support. That's so scary. That is so scary. Because what we're seeing right now is we're seeing even scholars, ulama, the ayah again in Surah At-Tawbah, subhanallah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا, where you would fear that one step, you're trying to go up the ladder, but then what is happening? Your foot is tripping. And then what happened? But you got all the way up there. And guess what? The higher you go up in the ladder, and on that ladder, the chances are that your ladder is going to be even shakier, and it's going to be harder to maintain balance the harder and the farther you go up on the ladder. That is extremely scary without us realizing yes, scholars are awarded. Exactly. There you go. Yes, ma'am. We're getting scholars awarded by Israel because of the contribution that they had given to Israel. Don't want to name names. All right. Don't want to name names. Don't want to name the organizations. Don't want to name any of that. But, it's quite scary. It is quite scary. Back during my actually, it was during my master's years, I wrote a research. All right, never said this in public, but I wrote a research. This research was actually about an ayah, but then that was during my feminist years. And then this ayah was really, I would say, going into the resources and really finding these loopholes, let's call it, in certain parts of our literature. And of course, they're even though they're scholars, but they're human beings. only the Quran is masoom. Only the Prophet ﷺ is masoom. But of course, infallible. But these people, the scholars, they're not infallible. But I wasn't aware of that entirely, or at least I knew it, but I didn't really see it through the lens that it's coming, that the scholar, my professor, had actually brought it to my attention. So I did this research and I was like, okay, there's a lot of misogyny in the Muslim literature. Wait, you'll get there. And I was, of course, having a feminist thinking. I was like, that's it. I'm going to write this into a book. I'm going to let this go viral and all of that, kind of this, this type of the 20s personality. I'm going to make this go viral, the teenagers and 20s personality, and where they don't even think farther than their age. They're just thinking about now. And then I presented it to my professor. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rabbi, give him a long life. His name is Dr. Mustafa Buswai. And I said, here's what I would like to write and make into a book. And it was really trying to, I guess, collect all those mistakes that related to women that we would find in Islamic literature. And what I mean by Islamic literature, fiqh, tafsir, etc., and put it all together and then say, well, yeah, see, we've got a problem right there. Misogyny actually has its roots in our history, its roots in the Islamic literature. That's so scary. That's a fitna on its own. That's a fitna on its own to spread within our minds. We already have so many things that are coming to us. So my professor said, I want you to calm down. I said, why? This is what's happening. Look at us. And he said, you know what? The ones that are going to take your research are not the Muslims. The ones that are going to take your research are really those that are trying to attack Islam. And we know already that these scholars are not infallible. We know already that they might have said something that here and there that might not necessarily be going in parallel with Islam. But if you're going to take that here and there, you might actually come about with this type of quilt that is all torn. And then who's going to be using it in order to put it as a stereotype, and certainly covering Islam with it and creating all these misconceptions in the minds of the Muslims? It's really those that are working against Islam. And he said, if we were a Muslim community that was probably mature in their understanding of Islam, in understanding of even their knowledge about their own literature, we would have probably said that's something that we could probably write in order to bring awareness in how we could use these resources. But the Muslim Ummah doesn't even know how to go back to these resources, let alone understand it, let alone to be critical in their thinking, to recognize that just because it is mentioned in the Muslim literature, it doesn't necessarily make it that that's what Islam is. And subhanAllah, I mean, that's really looking ahead. And Jazakallah khairan, it was really looking ahead in where the last thing you would want to do is definitely is be a supporter to shaitan. You want to be a supporter for in tansurullaha yansurkum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. Look at this ayah. If you victory Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will victory you and He'll keep you steadfast. And it's important to look ahead and not necessarily in an impulsive behavior, and that you're angry about something and therefore you're going to let your emotions or your impulsive, let me say, emotions take you elsewhere. Because when and what comes with impulsive behavior is losing balance. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُم. You really want to be steadfast? Well, I want you right there to look in how you would contribute for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to take that moment in order to learn how, one, how to do talab al-ilm, two, how to apply talab al-ilm, how to apply what you had learned, and three, how to memorize it and let it be what vibrates into your heart, what vibrates into your mind, and later on, what actually makes you move. You know, a vibration creates a locomotion, it creates a movement, and let that actually move you towards teaching, towards bringing awareness, towards creating a difference on ground. Then that's the person that we would consider al-alim al-rabbani, the alim that is rabbani. What is al-alim al-rabbani? Al-alim al-alim. I want you to look at these words, although kind of seem like they're actually the same root, but let's look at it. All right, let's see. Al-alim, al-alim, al-amil. See, they're the same exact letters, but they're actually meaning something else. Al-alim is the scholar. Al-amil is the scholar that applies what they had learned. Al-alim, al-amil. Let's actually put the harakat, right? Let's see if we can put the haraka right there. Al-alim. Here's the kasra. Al-amil. Here's the kasra. You can see the lam is here coming before it, and that this is the end. All right. Just see that and take the time. I know, every once in a while would have to remind us of being patient for talab al-ilm, because without us realizing that sometimes we're really rushing to get to the end. Okay. And what I would like to say is that what you are learning, although you may feel that you're not getting a degree for it, but believe it or not, this and what we're learning actually exceeds the levels of bachelor's and master's degrees and PhDs, because we're ahead of, remember that list when we said bachelor's and master's and where they're going and all of that? So we're actually going past that, and we're going to the books, learning the books that a PhD person is supposed to be going to and learning from, and even taking the time and the effort to go over and re-educate themselves. So that's what we're doing. So I want you to be patient, because you're trying to get to the past PhD levels, friends, right? Past the PhD levels, not the elementary. No, you're trying to go past. And inshallah Rabbil Alameen, you will go past. But remember what we started out with this class with. We started out with the A. وَلَوْ أَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجَ لَأَعَدُّوا لَهُ عُدَّةً. And remember this, with the ayah that we did before, if they had wanted to actually go, they would have put in the effort, the potential, and certainly they would have prepared themselves to go. And this is key. It's if you put in the effort, you put in the investment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give you, in tansurullah yansurkum, He'll give you a mile push. And it's all really by making those intentions transform from just intention. And look at this. لو أرادوا, if they had wanted, really attempted to put in the effort to go, لأعدوا له عدة. They would have actually put it on ground. And that's a thing. To sign up for a class, to probably make the team, etc. You wanted to get there. Even if you were not successful on ground, at least in getting to your goal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to judge the goal. He wants to see the effort. Keep that in mind. He wants to see the effort. And that's why when you look at like, oh, I'm not going to get a degree by listening to these classes, etc. It's not the degree that matters. What really matters is the degree you'll be in Jannah. So the degree you'll be in Jannah. You could be listening to the class. You could be putting the effort to do memorize Quran or putting the effort, etc. This is where I want to get to. If you put in that investment, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will actually give you that push. Just put in the investment. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll be back in short. All right. Oh dear, what did I just do? Sorry about that, everyone. I just had to do something. Remember, I'm a mother, so every once in a while, you might see me going away. Okay, here we go. I'm back. All right, here we go. So let's continue, inshallah, just after I know that was just a little, I guess, reminder on a side, just to keep us going, right? Because it can happen that we just all of a sudden lose our, I would say, lose our, what is the word, energy, and probably lose our
momentum.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very physics word. I like that. Yes, exactly. Lose our momentum, and then we would see our acceleration going slower and slower, right? So now we're trying to, I guess, right there, get our momentum, right? Collected together in order to create the energy, in order to go farther with the fullest acceleration, fullest speed, in order to continue, because we know our aim is high, right? Our aim is high, and we need to put in that effort. Where's our aim? Our aim is Jannah. How do we get to Jannah? Well, our tool is seeking ilm, is seeking the different ways to keep us steadfast, to make sure we're going the right direction, to make sure we're embracing the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent in the Quran. And we're basically, of course, by one, making sure we're heading toward the right focus, and at the same time, we're basically trying to gather, because we're human beings. We're human beings. We need supporters. So where do we find the support? Basically in talab al-ilm, in basically with these scholars right there. That's to help us, stay grounded. All right, let's continue right there. So we left off with this ayah right there, and we talked about what if the person basically was worried about losing wudu. Let's see right there, trying to do their wudu. But then we left off right here, right there. See, we even put the number 357. All right. What if we were to get into trying to prepare for the water, or we're trying to make wudu, but then, hey, Salat al-Asr, let's say, isn't 4:20, is at 4:20. And right there, it's already 4:10. All the time I was, I guess, on the highway, and it's already 4:10. I thought I could make it. By the time that I'm probably going to go upstairs, I'm going to probably, I don't know, prepare myself to get the wudu and everything. And perhaps, maybe, I don't know, trying to get things together. There's definitely not enough time for me to pray. Let's just assume that. Can we actually do tayammum? Because it's definitely faster. What is tayammum? I want to do a small thing in where tayammum is quite simple. So I'm just going to bring about a video so you could actually see what tayammum looks like, in order to see, how fast it could take compared to that. So let's see right there. I'm going to take one of these scholars and let them help me understand tayammum, right? Here we go, 24 seconds, but let's see. He's going to teach us how to do tayammum. Okay, this is actually a great scholar. I love listening to him, quite innocent. Here we go, this is it. What is he doing? And here we go. What did he do? He just basically tapped, let's say this is stone, okay? And let's just assume that he had his soil right there or sand right there. So what did he do? Let's do it again. We're going to make it into slow motion. Here we go. Tapped on it, wiped the face. This is it. And wipe the hands in. That's the end of it. That was it. That literally took. What do we got right there? Let's see how long it took. Let's see. That was probably less than 5 seconds. Let's see. Do it again. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. 10. And there we go. And I think, okay. We go tapping. And what are you doing? Wiping your face once, wiping your hands, and you're all done. What was that? Well, that was literally less than 5 seconds. Okay. Well, since you guys are you able to see what I'm doing? Let me show you something. This scholar right here is actually my favorite during our time. Period. This is my favorite scholar. This is the scholar.
What's his name?
Said
Oh, yeah, him.
Yep, this guy is actually my favorite scholar.
He's from Morocco, you said?
He's from Morocco. Yep.
Okay, mashallah.
He's actually an excellent scholar. This is my second favorite. Ibn Uthaymeen, certainly my second favorite, a great scholar. You could see great sense of humor, and definitely I think the students did an outstanding job. This is a scholar of usul, did an outstanding job. This guy is really rather interesting. Guess what? This guy is a Kuwaiti guy. He's not a scholar, but he was actually imprisoned in Guantanamo. I believe it was for 10 years. This guy. Can you believe that? And then released. Yep. And then released, imagine this guy was actually in Guantanamo, and he would actually have videos that talks about what happened at Guantanamo and how some had become Muslim and how they were detained and how he was questioned and what for what. And of course, they released him after 10 years. Imagine that. After 10 years, after saying that he wasn't actually involved in quote unquote terrorist acts, but just imagine that. And he would, and he would say some of the stories there. And one of them really baffled me. This guy who was at Guantanamo, okay, this guy was actually not a fighter. He was more wanting, he was a 27-year-old guy, went to Afghanistan really just to give donations for an orphanage. And then somehow, ends up, being captured as a potential terrorist, ends up really going through the Bagram and all those different years until ended up finally in Guantanamo. But then he was saying a lot of stories of different people that were at Guantanamo. One of them really scares me. One of them actually was a fighter at one point, and then of course, detains up in Guantanamo and actually becomes Christian. He became Christian and went back. Of course, he was released. Of course, hey, you became Christian. Okay, we're done with you. Gets released and goes back to Afghanistan, and then actually gets, I don't know, killed or dies as Christian. That one's really scary. That one is really scary. He says a lot of stories about different things. I don't know why, I guess his video just pops up and then I couldn't not say anything. And he's from Kuwait, all right? And this scholar, on the other hand, is a scholar of hadith. Ladies, he's already married to 4, so don't even think, okay? All right, and all his wives are actually scholars too. All right, just keep that in mind. All his wives are scholars, and they would invest in his, I guess, the incognitos that are, I guess, supporting him in his talab al-ilm. And yes, but didn't go through the schooling system that we would basically think of. He actually went to talab al-ilm in Yemen and didn't go through the education system where you would get a bachelor's, a master's, and voila, there you are with that kind of system. No, he actually did talab al-ilm in his own way and actually invested a lot. A very nice guy, to be honest. I think he's a very nice guy, very innocent, very, very innocent. I know it's really strange to actually speak about a scholar as innocent, but you could see in his talks and in his videos in where he's not, I don't know how to say this, but you could see he's not necessarily so aware of all these sneaky things that people would do. So he's a really simple person and, you know, really simple person, but definitely a scholar. All right. So then we went into Salah. You guys saw, or sisters, you saw how we would do Tayyamum. I'm just going to take that again. So can we actually do Tayammum since it would only take 5 seconds, but Wu'dhu, if we were to do Wu'dhu, and of course, let's say Asr is at 4:20, but I only had what, 5 minutes left for Asr or something like that. Can I just do Tayammum? And here's the thing. Whether you started, let's say if you started Salah, whether you had completed Salah, or whether you just said Allahu Akbar, this is called ash-shuru' for Salah. What is ash-shuru'? Ash-shuru' means you started. If you managed to make it to say Allahu Akbar, that is takbirat al-ihram, that is before even making ruku' sujood, before even making a whole rak'ah, you just said Allahu Akbar, that means you made it for that Salah. Okay? Should I say that again? You made it for that Salah means you caught it on time.
Oh, so it's not the
if, let's say,
second rakah
it's not necessarily the second
with
rak'ah.
ruku'ah?
Nope, just the first. Just you said Allahu Akbar, you just did that shuru'ah.
Oh,
That means you made it for that Salah. Okay?
mashallah.
Yeah, so just, it's not necessarily the second ruku'. That's it. You, Allahu Akbar, shuru'ah for Salah, you made it for that Salah. Now, here's one thing. That is shuru'ah for Salah. Am I able to do it? And what if I couldn't? I could probably make it for that Salah and start out with the Salah. If I would have probably done that Tayammum, the Mustafa al-Adawi, and how he demonstrated it right there, could probably be able to do that. I only have right now, a minute left, 2 minutes left. Then in that situation, okay, scholars actually had differences of opinions. Let's say the differences of opinions. Number one, you got Imam Malik. He basically said that in these dire situations, you can actually do tayammum if you didn't have enough time. Let's say you were on the street. All right, here we go. And the nearest bathroom is probably 20 minutes away. Okay, that's the nearest. What do they call that in America when they actually have these rest areas? Okay, nearest
Rest station, or what is it?
rest station. There you go, resting areas. So that's 20 minutes from now. And you know, you don't have wudu, you don't have enough water in your car. And I mean, it's a safe area, but hey, it's just highways after highways. So in that situation, you are capable of probably, I don't know, parking on the shoulder and making your salah right there on the shoulder and putting your car into, I guess, emergency, just making your salah right there, but you don't have wudu. And it's the nearest exit is 20 minutes. So can you do that tayammum? So according to Malik, yes, you can. He said because tayammum was really permitted in order to, one, really save the timing for Salah. So anyways, in other words, the recipe, the ingredients, let's say it that way, the ingredients for you, why tayammum was anyways permitted was really because of the timing for Salah and you not having the resource, in order to do wudu. So therefore, we've got the recipe right there. That's according to Imam Malik. Let's see, the majority of the scholars, they said, well, no, this person is capable of finding water. They've got the water right there. And yes, it's probably 20 minutes away, but then of course, the water is there. So it's not that the water is absolutely not there. The water is there, but the water is basically right now out of reach, but it's within reach. Okay, so that's really strange because the majority, they said فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا. They said, let's look at the words and they took it verbatim, in a verbatim way. They said فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا, where the ayah says, and if you do not find water, then do tayammum. And it's not like there's no water that they can find. They know where the water is. They can go right there. The exit, yes, it's 20 minutes away, but the exit is there, and they know that there is a resting area, there's a bathroom, public bathroom, whatever it is, and they know it's there. So that's a thing in where they took it in the literal way, and they said, فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. The majority actually said that no, they can't do tayammum. Okay, it's really rather interesting. I really would agree with Imam Malik, because the whole idea, look at the object, فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, it doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't find water at all. But this is actually talking about in the circumstance that you cannot find or you don't have water that is available to you at that moment. So in other words, what you're really trying to do, you're really trying to make it on time for Salah, and you're seeing whether it's the water not being present or you can't find it. All right, let's say, but at the end, you could see, by the way, just on a side, let me tell you a secret. Oh, I'm saying a lot of secrets today. Okay, the secret is, you see all of this. This is not the end of the whole story. This is just a summary for the whole story. So when you look at, for example, he says, مالك يجوز التيمم في مثل ذلك لأن التيمم إنما جاز في الأصل. So what he's saying is that Imam Malik considered this as permissible because the person, but in other words, the object for tayammum is really in order to make sure that the person is praying on time, right? But this is just the tip of the whole conversation. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's in 4 lines. He summarized a debate that might actually take in these chapter books, that might actually take maybe the debate if you were to write, let's say, a research on it. Let's say I wanted, during my master's years, undergrad, wanted to write a research on that. It'll probably take maybe a 30 page, let's say, project or research. And he just summarized it in 4 lines. Just to tell you, I know the story does exist. He just want to summarize it in 4 lines. You see it right there? He just summarized the whole story in 4 lines, but that's an indication for you. So even al-Jumhur, if I were to take the Shafi'is, the Malikis, the Hanbalis, the Sufyan al-Thawri, all of those, they'll all have more evidence than this. So this is not the end of the story. So even if you were to read, oh, this is their evidence, that's it. No, that's not it. But al-Qurtubi just wanted to make the story short for you and just give you, I guess, the most important evidences that kind of stand out in this whole argument. But there's definitely more to say, and they'll respond to each other. And definitely, you just say that even if you were to study Tafsir al-Qurtubi, it doesn't make you a scholar. Oh man, we thought we were getting there. No, inshallah, you'll be getting there. We will all, inshallah, get there. And remember, it's not going to be a reward based off what you had ended with. It's not the result, it's the effort, because the effort is what will result you into Jannah. Okay. All right. Let's see. What about to remove all the impurities? Do I have to remove each and every single impurity? Here in Malaysia, I absolutely hate those, but they've got squat bathrooms, at least. I mean, they do have some toilets, but they'll have a lot of squat bathrooms. And certainly, if you're going to use a squat bathroom, guarantee, whether you're male or female, guarantee you're going to splash. Sorry, I know it sounds really disgusting, but yeah. You guarantee. Anyhow. But at the end, the question is, do I have to remove each and every single minuscule najasa that is there? Let's say some scholars, based on this ayah, they said you don't necessarily have to remove each and every single najasa unless it is outstandingly big. Here's the sister, she's like, that's a nightmare. I know that's a nightmare because, my son, when he was young, I had him go and there was no choice but to use that bathroom. He's like, what if I would fall in there? And I was like, don't worry, I'll be there to get you out. It's like, what if I would fall? And I was like, okay, I'll hold on to you. We'll figure this out somehow. All right. I know it feels like, like these
My kids were scared. They were scared of going to one of those porta potties.
I know
Let alone that.
I know it really looks scary. It's like, what if, I don't know, somehow I basically just fall in and just dive into it. Man, that would be really scary, but but that's exactly how he was scared. Anyhow, so some scholars, all right, they basically said that you don't necessarily have to remove every single najasa, all right, in the evidence, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, that if you basically want to go for salah, that of course the ayah doesn't say that you have to do istinja, in other words, completely washing your bottom, but mentioned the wu'dhu. And they said, well, if removing each and every single, let's say, minuscule najasa was actually necessary, then you would have actually found the ayah, instead of saying, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, let's look at this ayah. Instead of saying, here it is, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا, then if you attempt to start your prayer, then wash your faces, your arms, etc. But then here, they said, well, it didn't really start with istinja, which is washing your private part. It didn't even start with it. So therefore, those scholars, they basically said, well, that actually means that you don't necessarily have to go through istinja as part of the process. And that's basically the Abu Hanifa and his friends, so the Hanafi school. And it's also رواية أشهب عن Malik. Remember, Malik actually, just on a side, okay? Malik actually had a number of different ruwah. What does that even mean? So imagine here's Imam Malik, and you had Imam Malik was teaching, but his method of teaching was he would teach, and then the class is there, people would take notes, students would take notes, and then they would basically pass it on. These students, they traveled in other places. When they traveled to other places, they basically had passed on this ilm. All right. Now, this later on became, let's call it a whole riwayah. So these students, they traveled, whether it's Ashhab or whether it's Suhnun or whether it's Asad ibn al-Furat, all of those, they would basically continue forming. So the students became a school themselves. The students became teachers that basically had learned from their teachers, and they would relate it and narrate it that it's actually off Malik. All right, look at the adab. They wanted to say, this is what I learned from this scholar. This is what I basically am really presenting. It's what they had radiated onto us. So you could say that's why you would have Imam Malik. He had a number of students, Ashhab, Ibn Suhnun, Asad ibn al-Furat, Ibn Wahab, Ibn al-Qasim, etc. And that's why you would see that. He said, Qala ibn Wahab, Qala ibn al-Qasim, Riwayat, Ashhab. And of course there's more, but we're just here, because you're reading a Maliki book, you really need to be aware in understanding how this whole mapping actually goes. Okay, let's see. And here's another narration for the Malikis. Now you could see that Maliki, there's one narration upon Maliki which really is exactly like the Hanafis, in where no, you don't have to remove each and every single najasa. So in other words, if you see things splashing on you, you don't really have to be too concerned all the time. And this is really helpful, especially for those that have OCD, in where those that have OCD, they can be really particular. What if there's a single drop? What if I have to do this? And then they become really obsessed with removing each and every single najasa. Let's see another narration upon Malik. And by the way, although yes, I would say he is perhaps focusing on the Maliki, but the other opinions, you're going to see they don't really go out of the Maliki parameters right there. So let's see, the second opinion is that you are obligated to remove each and every single impurity, whether you remember that there's impurity there or whether you had forgotten about it, which is actually what Shafi'i had mentioned as well. Let's see a second or a third opinion. They said no, it would be basically something that you would remove. Let me give you, sorry, but I'm going to be a little graphic right there, or probably I don't know, too detailed, but let's just assume you make wudu and everything's fine. All right, you pray, and then later on you see that in your undergarment that you actually had some remains of najasa that you did not actually see. You did your homework, but then when you came back the second time, and which is probably after, I don't know, a prayer had passed or two prayers even had passed, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to do? Am I going to redo all the prayers that I basically right now I'm discovering that, oh, I probably just didn't do the best cleaning or something. So that's what we're talking about, okay? That's what we're talking about. In where do you necessarily, are you going to consider that there was a najasa? Or are you going to consider that did you do your homework to remove it? Yes, I did. Okay, well, did you forget about it? What really happened? So that's what we're discussing right there, in where these different circumstances, okay? So we're here, I would say, laying out these formulas, and then these formulas, you can apply it on different circumstances, okay? So I'm just, giving you some circumstances, and then you're seeing how we can apply these formulas on it. So let's say the third opinion, no, you would, if you are aware of it, then it's not enough to just say, yeah, I know it's there, but I'm not going to remove it. And if you had forgotten, or let's say you're not aware of it, then in that situation, your, let's say, effort was actually considered as that was enough, and your salah is fine. All right, let's see. Abu Hanifa actually said, no, you would have to remove, he looked at the amount, and he said, قدر الدرهم البغلي. That's a really interesting one. Let me show you what he's talking about. And so we would see, okay, we would see what we're looking at right there. And where did he actually get that from? Let me tell you where he got that from. So he basically said you would have to remove the impurity that is the size of, it was a currency at the time, it was called a dirham, all right? And let me show you what that dirham actually looks like. So the dirham, it's baghli, that actually has a certain animal on it. I guess that was a dirham during their time, which basically right there, that looks like a lion than actually anything else. But okay, right there, this is this dirham that they're actually talking about. All right, and of course you're like, okay, well, I don't know what size that is according to the Hanafi. So why did they even use that? So they basically took it off based on hadith and narration of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And when he was actually asked about the size, the amount of najasa that you would basically have to remove, and that Umar ibn al-Khattab actually said that it's the amount in where he said إذا كان مثل ظفري هذا لا يمنع جواز الصلاة. So here we go. Umar ibn al-Khattab basically said, if it is the size of my own finger, at least fingernail, let's actually look at this hadith, right? I'm going to get it out. Or it's not a hadith, sorry. It's actually supposed to be a narration of Umar. So that would make it an athar. He said, here we go. He said, if it's the size of my fingernail, then that would not prohibit making salah. So that's the evidence that they used. And this right there, let's see. بدائع الصنائع, that this book is for al-Kasani, for a Hanafi, sorry, for a Hanafi scholar, and that's the evidence that they depended on. They basically said, well, here it is. We've got Umar al-Khattab. He said, if it's the size of my fingernail, so we're looking at, of course, expecting, Umar ibn Khattab and what his fingernail would actually be, and where are we necessarily look at Umar ibn Khattab's finger, but we're here, the Hanafis, in order to give a size or some, potential size right there. They said it dirham. So they said it's like almost the large coin. All right. So at the end, of course, well, this is their evidence. In other words, what they were really considerate over is really, if it's a good amount of najasa, then you would have to remove that. And you cannot necessarily say that, well, I forgot, or etc. So if it's a good amount of najasa that you could actually see, then the prayers that you had made with this najasa being there, that whether you had known about or whether you had not known about, you have to just keep in mind that according to the Hanafis, that no, the najasa was there, then therefore your salah, if it was the size of this much najasa, then your salah is invalid and you would have to redo those prayers. Okay, so just wanted you to keep in mind of that. Let's say, and here al-Qurtubi basically said, and what is actually right is the way of Ibn Wahab, which is right there, in where you would have to remove this najasa, this impurity, whether you remembered or whether you had forgotten, whether you were unaware of it. In other words, if it's there, then you would have to consider that it was basically there, and regardless of the size, you have to put in your effort. If you know it's there, that means you would have to remove it. And the evidence is that the Prophet ﷺ actually said, here's their evidence, and that the Prophet ﷺ passed by these graves, and he said that they're actually being here, of course, punished. And they weren't punished for something that is, marvelously, or something that is magnificently big, but the first one, of course, passed by two graves. The first grave was basically engaging and had a history of backbiting and speaking about others. And for the other, لا يستنزه من بوله, didn't avoid or cleanse after their own urine. All right. And of course, he said, and a person would not be punished for leaving something that is obligatory. So if this person is not necessarily being keen on purification, he said, well, that's our evidence in where al-istinzah min al-bawl, this is not talking about somebody actually urinating on themselves, but this is actually talking about a person that recognizes that urine was splashing on them, or recognizes that there was najasa, but they didn't put the effort to cleanse themselves. All right, so this basically, and he's responding to those that said, well, the ayah didn't even say anything about istinjat, therefore it's not obligatory. He said, no, it's the ayah was not necessarily telling you that istinjat is not obligatory, or at least cleansing your bottom is not obligatory, or staying away from impurity is not obligatory. The ayah was right there, going straight to the subject that was, of course, referring to the question or the circumstances, or here telling you about Tahara, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not necessary. So it's not telling you that it's part of the process. So when you make wudu, all right, if you passed gas, well, that doesn't mean you would have to go and make istinjat, which is washing your bottom. But If there is a najasa on your garment or a najasa on your body, then that's what we're actually talking about, that you would have to put the effort, that you would have to remove that if it is there, that najasa, that impurity. And certainly, al-Qurtubi was responding to that. All right, so I know it's actually past our time and past the other sister's bedtime. So we'll just stop right there. And sorry, we promised that we would go farther, but yeah, we tried, right? Right. Inshallah, we will continue next time. I know some sisters right now are having a dire question. What about cervical mucus? Is that actually falling within this? I know what's on all the sisters' minds. Number one, there is no hadith whatsoever that actually discussed cervical mucus. Now, here's one thing. Because there's not a single hadith, the scholars actually had differences of opinions, because for sure, cervical mucus is actually something that happens to all women. That's what actually keeps all the let's say the inner areas for the woman actually fertile and actually continue for, of course, her hormones and all of that. That's actually healthy. Okay. And we know that it changes in its consistency and changes in how sticky it is and all of that. Sorry, and if it's too detailed, but it's really important to keep in mind when we're speaking about fiqh, we're really trying to understand the whole thing. Okay, so it doesn't matter on how watery or consistent or how sticky it is. That doesn't matter. It's still there. So the scholars actually had differences of opinions in regards to the cervical mucus. Opinion number one is that this is basically, we don't have any hadith or ayah that discusses this. Therefore, it's tahar. Therefore, it's pure, and that's it. That's the first opinion. It's pure. Whether the amount is large, you had a panty liner, blah, 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 all these different things, it doesn't matter. It's pure. That's the first opinion. It's pure. There's not a single hadith that said that it was najis, therefore it's not najis. Simple. The second opinion, they said, well, no, it actually falls within the category. Anything that the private part discharges is actually impure. And certainly, whether we're speaking about the exits, whether we're speaking about the anal, or whether we're speaking about what the urethra at the end of the day, or whether we're speaking about vaginal at the end of the day, it's basically something that the body released. Therefore, it's, yes, kharij min as-sabilayn. I know it's not part of a sabilayn, but of course it's another sabil, or it's another pathway. At the end of the day, the body released it. So they basically put, let's say, the default rule, which is anything that the body basically releases is right there, najis, and therefore this was included within it. Okay, that was the second opinion. Then these scholars that called it najis, they basically had differences of opinions on whether it's a wudu breaker, B, on whether it itself is impure, and therefore you have to change your garment. Just keep it in mind. I'm just laying out those differences of opinions. All right. So the scholars that said it's a wudu breaker, well, they said, okay, it's a wudu breaker. That means you got to redo your wudu with it. Some scholars actually said it's a wudu breaker, but it's not impure. And other scholars said it's impure, but it's not a wudu breaker. Okay. And I'm just laying out those opinions, but to make the story short, wallahu a'lam, it is best to stay on the safe side. If you're capable of redoing your wudu just to stay on the safe side, well, good for you. If you're capable of maintaining a clean garment from that, well, good for you. But we know that panty liners are not good to always wear. because they have certain substances. It can actually trap moisture. It basically increases your chances of getting yeast infections, all of that. So if you're in that situation, then taking the opinion that it's not a wudu breaker and it's not an impure substance is actually a considerable opinion. I would usually, especially for younger girls, so we're talking between the ages of 13, 14, up until perhaps 25, or maybe even younger than that, they're constantly getting that, especially if they're in a hot climate area, and if they're doing a lot of activities, they'll get that frequently. And I know it sounds disgusting, but I've had a lot of girls skip prayer or even stop Salah entirely because this was something that was just becoming too hectic for them. I'm just noting it there, in where this is a considerable opinion that you do not have to basically consider it a wudu breaker, and that it is actually pure, and that it basically would mean that you don't have to redo your wudu. You're fine, move on, and that you don't have to change your garment. And certainly, it's a considerable opinion. I'll just make the story short. In other words, it doesn't fall within necessarily all of this, according to some of the scholars. It doesn't fall within this category. All right. So, wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. I know, we kind of went into different classes and different topics and different, issues, but alhamdulillah, it's all inshallah within talab al-ilm. Any questions, you can unmute yourselves. I don't mind anybody unmuting themselves, and inshallah we will answer the questions.
Okay.
Assalamu
Since
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
alaikum. Sheikh, I wanted to ask you about what salahs are obligatory on some women who has just made ghusl. From the time that she's made ghusl, is it just one prayer? Is it the whole day's prayer? I've heard different opinions. I just don't know.
I'm going to assume that you're asking the question in regards to a sister that finished her cycle, okay? That finished her cycle, and then she wanted to make ghusl. She made ghusl. This is not talking about janaba. This is what I'm assuming the question is in regards to.
Yes.
Right. So if the sister, okay, you're going to look at, of course, when a sister would end her period, okay, she could either have, which is really rare, but right there, the white discharge in where, yep, she's completely done with her period. But that doesn't really happen until after a couple of days, usually 2, 3, 4 days. Okay. And usually what they would get is somewhat of a yellowish discharge, sometimes clear discharge, yellowish discharge. Okay. This clear yellowish discharge. Okay. Scholars actually had differences of opinions on the yellowish discharge, so just on a side. And during the times where there's no discharge at all, it's just jafaf. It's just basically just dry. There's really nothing. During that time, okay, let's say we're talking about the first day. She's like, okay, I wiped, there's nothing. I'm not sure if I'm going to get more spotting. I don't know. So she basically waited prayer 1, prayer 2, because she didn't want to keep continuing doing 3 and 4 showers that day, so she can wait a whole day just to make sure that she didn't spot. Okay, here we go. She waited a whole day. She didn't spot anything. In other words, that timing when she didn't spot, she just didn't know that she was actually obligated to pray. So second day comes, or at least by Aysha, she's like, well, I didn't spot the whole day. I guess I'm done. So then in that situation, we'll say, when was the last time you had seen any spotting? And she'll say, well, yesterday at noon or whatever it is, or today at noon, whatever it is, then I would say, okay, so if it was at noon, then Duhur right there, Asr right there, Maghrib right there, Isha right there, then you're going to redo those prayers. Okay, got it? But if, of course, every woman's body is different, but of course, if that didn't happen, and hey, she knew her cycle was done, because it goes into, especially, the age of the later ages, you'll be able to see a certain pattern that your body goes through. All right. And in that situation, she's like, no, I know this is going to be my last hour or my last 2 hours, whatever. And basically did your ghusl right there. And you did spot 3 hours ago, but you know that was going to be final. And that was it. So in that situation, you don't have to do any prayers. All right. So because you didn't miss any. All right. I hope I answered that one, Sumaya.
Yes, Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم. Any other question? Noura, you had something.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, usually I take a shower and then I put on my
Hold on,
socks.
Noura. You are recorded publicly, so I can stop the recording if you want to say something about yourself.
Oh, no, it's fine. So if a person if a person were to take a shower and put on their socks, and I think you said that they would have wudu on their socks for 5 prayers or 24 hours, different opinions between the scholars, right?
Okay, so tomorrow we're actually going to talk about the socks and al-khuffain, inshallah, and go in
Oh, okay.
details in that regards. But to make the story short,
Because
if you're
sometimes I forget, like,
okay, I'll make the story short before we do this tomorrow. All right, to make the story short, if you're a resident, you can actually make wiping on the socks for 5 prayers. Okay, for 5 prayers, starting to count from the first time you lost your wudu. Okay, if you're on a journey for 72 hours or 15 prayers, starting to count from the first time you lost your wudu. I don't know who wants to keep a sock on for, I don't know, 3 days,
that would
but
be
we're
hard to
just
keep track of 15 prayers.
I mean, 15 prayers. Exactly. Well, I mean, you can keep track of it by considering it's 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't recommend keeping a sock on for 3 days, but
Yeah, some fungus.
okay, yeah, definitely. But I'm just laying out the differences of opinions, right? Or actually the scholars and what they had actually mentioned in regards to let's say how they derived the ruling from hadith. So I'm just laying it out right there, but that's not necessarily 72 hours to mean 72 hours. I'm saying 72 hours to actually mean interpreting 3 nights and 3 days.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wonder, because sometimes I forget, like, how long it's been. So
Well,
in
I mean,
that case, I should just take off my socks and make wudu, right?
well, no, if you're a resident, I wouldn't think you would be capable, I wouldn't think you would forget within 24 hours, Nuda.
I
If
wish.
you are
Okay.
forgetting within 24 hours, girl, I'm starting to get concerned.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم. Any other question, my friends? All right, my friend. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Samuel. Yes,
I just wanted to know if if I clicked on the tafsir or if this was also fiqh. What's the book that you guys are reading?
Oh, the book that we're reading. All right. Well, Sumaya, I'm so happy that you're here because I haven't heard your voice in a long while. So just remember 58. Here we go. Let's see. This, my dear, is called Al-Jama' li Ahkam al-Quran. Okay.
Oh, mashallah.
Yes. We've been working with, you remember that book, Sumaya, when I used to have with me, I would carry this book with me. It's a huge volume. Remember that one?
Yes, this is the PDF version.
This is the PDF version.
Oh, mashallah.
Remember that? Yeah, so
Okay.
it's just the PDF version of that same book that we basically did. And plus, of course, it had a tahqiq, the book that I had didn't. So this is actually better.
Perfect. Jazakallah khairan.
All
And I'm
right.
so excited. I'm back.
All right. So inshallah, Sumaya, good to hear you. And I'm so happy to hear your voice. Rabbi yahfadhku jami'an. I'm just going to stop right there. And let's see, where are we going to be ending? No, we're going to be ending we're just going to be ending how do you do this? We're not going to be ending the class. Oh, here we go. I'm just stopping the